Good evening, folks. Welcome to our February Parent Talk on forming healthy habits. My name is Michelle Petrusevich, and I'm the chair for the Parent Talk at VCPA. Before we begin, I would like to invite Jonathan from grade 9 to do the prayer. Jonathan?
All-loving and merciful God, the Vancouver College community comes to you in praise and thanksgiving for all you have done for us in these past 100 years of faith and learning. Through our joys and sorrows, struggles and triumphs, you, O Lord, have been our steadfast protector and provider. We pray for enlightenment, that we may honor and learn from the past and look to the future with integrity and hope. Through our intercession of our spiritual founder, Blessed Edmund Rice, bestow perpetual growth upon our community. May the presence and compassion we offer our students lead them to a deeper connection with their faith and a life of service to others. We pray that you strengthen our mind and spirit and fill our hearts with understanding, wisdom, kindness, love, and peace, so that we may continue the good work of all those who came before us in the Catholic education of youth for your greater glory. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Blessed Edmund Rice, live Jesus in our hearts.
Thank you so much. Oh, I need the phone back. Okay, so now I would like to introduce the speaker. So Alexia is a good friend of mine, and her and I met a few years ago. She is an educator. You guys read her bio, and she's a nurse at St. Paul's Hospital, but she also she's a founder of Strong Healthy Kids, and that's how I actually met her at one of the talks. And so when we were doing the survey for the study for this year's themes, healthy habits was one of the themes that came up, and that's why I invited her to participate. So I would like to have a warm welcome for Alexia, and for the next we'll go for about an hour, and she does have a lot of information. So for people who are here, we do have some handouts, and just take notes, and then there were a couple of questions that she will answer throughout that were submitted, and then we'll wrap up by around 8ish. Thank you.
Oh, you I don't need that one. Excellent. Thanks, Michelle. And thanks for making time to be here tonight, to those of you in the room and to those of you joining online. I know you have busy lives, so let's get started and make the most of the time that we have. This is one of my favorite topics to teach and to coach people on, because behavioral change is a skill. And so people tend to have a lot of stories around things that they're good at or not good at. And behavioral change and creating healthy habits is just like anything. So there's some foundational principles, and with practice, you can apply these principles to any aspect of your life and create a series of healthy changes that over time make a really significant difference. So I'm sure all of you can think of some things that you know would help you feel better physically, mentally, emotionally, if you made them a regular habit. So some of the common ones are drinking more water, getting more sleep, eating more fruits and vegetables, reducing our screen time, more social connection with friends, family, and loved ones. And while we know all these things that we could do or that we would like to do, creating these changes is not always easy. And so you might have tried multiple approaches that haven't worked for you, leaving you feeling stuck, discouraged, or frustrated. Or maybe there are so many things that you'd like to change that you feel overwhelmed and you don't even know where to start. So tonight, we're going to just zone in on the things that you can do, on the ways to create healthy change. And I hope that tonight you'll leave with 1, 2, maybe 3 small, simple things that you could do with an idea of how to do them and how to implement them into your life. But before I dive into how we create a foundation for healthy habits for not only ourselves, but also the kids in our lives, I'd like to tell you a quick story. So this is my family. I have a 15-year-old daughter. Her name is Berlin, and this is my husband, Greg. And I love this photo. It was a spectacular sunny day, and we did one of the most challenging day hikes that we've done, which was up to the top of the Lions, or traditionally known as the Two Sisters. And we love hiking and backpacking together. It's one of our ways that we like to connect as a family and have quality time and make memories together. But the reason I love this picture is because it's actually really significant to me personally. So when I was pregnant, I was working as a teacher, and I had a really stable routine, and exercise was a regular part of my life, right up until Berlin was born. But when she was 8 months old, I started full-time school, back at school, to become a nurse. And after finishing that program 2 years later, I began working 12-hour shifts at St. Paul's Hospital. I felt exhausted almost all the time, which for me manifests as headaches, nausea, irritability, lack of motivation, and needless to say, I was not active. In this transition from teaching to nursing, I'd lost my routine. My habits had been built into that routine, and I didn't know how or where to start. And in becoming a working mom, with this shift in identity, I'd stopped prioritizing my own health. And every time I tried to exercise, as I had prior to having a child, it felt awful and very discouraging. And this continued for almost 5 years. So eventually, with Berlin's 5th birthday on the horizon, I made a decision. And ultimately, this is how many habits, or when we want to intentionally create new habits, this is how it starts. It starts with a decision. And it starts with a reason. So if a habit's not important to you, it's very unlikely that it will become a habit. Because we won't prioritize it, we won't create the neural pathways to make it a habit. But this was really important to me. I really wanted to be a role model for her. I really wanted to feel strong and healthy again. And there was such an effect, a ripple effect in every aspect of my life, given the fact that I wasn't feeling healthy in this aspect of my life. But I had to create new habits, and I really didn't know how to do that. So this is what I'm going to share with you tonight, is how, when we have this desire, how when we've made a decision, we want to make some healthy changes, what are the things that we can do to create that change and to make those changes sustainable and to continue for the long term. So let's start with how to create a habit. What is a habit? How do we create new ones? And how do we change old ones or unhealthy ones? From there, we'll look at a simple framework that I refer to as the 4 pillars of physical health. And it's important to recognize that the ideas that I'm going to share with you tonight, the suggestions, and the topics that we're going to talk about, the way that we find and create optimal health in the physical domain, in the mental, emotional, spiritual domain, it will look different for everybody. These things vary depending on your goals, your age and stage in life, your preferences, your resources, and your values and preferences. So the underlying principles are the same, but I acknowledge that they may not look the same when they play out in each of your lives. So what is a habit? Some of you might be familiar with Mel Robbins. She's written some books and she's got a podcast. Her podcast isn't for everyone, depending on your tolerance for certain language, but she is an expert in behavioral change. And she's recently come out with a podcast episode on the science of creating new habits. And so I'm going to share a few of her ideas with you, but if you'd like to learn more, this is a great resource. So all habits have 3 things. They have a reminder, which is also can be referred to as a cue or a trigger. And a trigger is anything either external or internal that prompts the behavior. So it could be a sound. Your alarm clock is a good example, right? That is the reminder or the cue or the trigger to get you up out of bed. It could be an activity. It might be other people. So we develop habits with certain people in our lives and patterns of communication and behavior. It might be something in the environment. So it could be a visual reminder to you, to a sticky note somewhere to remind you to do something. It might be a location. It could be a certain time of day. Every day at such and such a time you do whatever your behavior is. And it can be an emotional state. And this is important to recognize when we're trying to understand why it is that we have developed certain habits, or why we can't develop the habits that we want to. So that's the first thing when we're trying to create a new habit. Do we have a cue or a trigger or something that prompts the behavior, the habit that we're trying to create? Now, when we think of habits, we often think only about this second step, which is the routine, the actual habit or the behavior pattern that is prompted by the reminder. And then in order to create a habit, there actually has to be some kind of reward or benefit. So we'll talk a little bit more about this, but you've probably heard of the hormone dopamine, which is something that's released by the brain, and it is an extremely powerful reward for certain behaviors that we do. And so when we are starting to get curious about how we can create change, or how we can, either in a positive way, or how we can untangle a habit that we've created. And I use this word untangle because habits are simply neural patterns. They're like well-established neural pathways for things that we don't have to even think about. So there's no drama, there's no resistance, it's just a well-established neural pathway. And in order to untangle those neural connections, it requires intentionality. So I mentioned dopamine. And this helps us to understand why it's so challenging to untangle certain habits or change unhealthy habits. Because it creates a pleasure sensation, it evokes a strong emotion in us. So things like sugar, alcohol, social media, pornography, video games are examples of activities that evoke or causes the brain to release this dopamine, which means that there's this built-in reward that creates a strong sensation. And every time we activate this neural pattern, this habit loop, the patterns become reinforced. So some of you might have seen this book. If you haven't, or if you're interested in learning more about the science, this is an excellent book on the sort of the science of creating habits. He says building good habits and breaking bad ones. But I like this quote from James Clear. He says, "If you're having trouble changing your habits, the problem isn't you. The problem is your system. You do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your system." So when we're trying to create change, we want to look at what is the system that's in place. Going back to these three reminders here, or these three pieces of the habits. What is the system that we have created or that we need to create in order to change those habits? So relying on willpower is exhausting. And the reality is that our motivation fluctuates. So if you think of willpower like a box of matches, every day you start with a full box of matches. And each time you make a decision, you strike a match. Once all the matches have been used, your willpower is gone. So we want to create sustainable systems that minimize the number of decisions that we have to make so that we aren't dependent on motivation. So in this book, Atomic Habits, and in other places you can find it as well, but James Clear talks about the 4 laws of behavior change. You want to make it obvious. So there needs to be that cue, that trigger. You want to make it attractive to create desire in order to carry out the behavior. You want to make it easy. And this is especially important when we're trying to create habits for kids. So I'm going to give you a little example here. So this is my water jar, okay? So if one of my goals is to drink more water, I want to make it obvious. So first of all, I start my day with this in a very visible place. It's like actually right next to my coffee cup. And so it's obvious. I start with it full in the morning so that it's easy attractive, well, I don't know if this is attractive to you, but in the morning I'm very thirsty. And so there is something about craving water or craving something to drink. And so when this is there, I wake up in the morning, it's obvious, I see it, I'm thirsty, and it's easy because I've already got it. Now, make it satisfying, it's kind of built in here. But if your kids if you are having difficulty making it attractive, add some natural flavors, add lemon, add cucumber, add a cinnamon stick and let it just sit there overnight. Add lime, add mint, whatever it is that you want to play around with, but something to make it a little bit more inviting. So I'm going to go back to my example with the exercise here though. So for me, I wanted to create a habit of being active again. So how did I make it obvious? What was my cue? Well, first of all, I decided when I made a plan, so it was going to be first thing in the morning. I had previously had this nice routine of finishing my teaching day, going to the gym or going for a run, coming home, having dinner. Well, now working 12-hour shifts and having a little child at home, that was not an option for me. And so I needed to do it in the morning when it was going to work for my schedule. But I had to make it obvious. So when I woke up, my alarm went off, and not only was that my trigger to get out of my bed, it was my trigger to get my clothes on. So my clothes are there, they're set out. I've decided what I'm going to wear. I have decided what I'm going to do so that I'm not having to make any decisions. I'm not having to use any willpower other than to get into my clothes and exercise. I made it super easy for myself. So 10 minutes. And to me, I knew that I would feel so good once I had done it. Okay? So there was that craving, but on the days when I wasn't feeling it, then that's when I really had to dig into my motivation. Why am I doing this? Oh yeah, I'm not doing this because it's going to feel great right now. I'm doing this because I want to be a good role model for my daughter. I want to feel strong and healthy, and I know that this is the only way for me to do that. And so I made it easy. 10 minutes, that was my commitment. Previously, I might have exercised for 30 minutes or 45 minutes or gone to a class for an hour. That wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for me to get to a class, so I had to make it so seemingly simple and easy for me that I could get it done. And the reward, I love breakfast, I love to eat, and I love a good cup of coffee. So it's like, okay, I only have to do 10 minutes. And then I was done for the day. I felt like I'd been successful, so there's that response there. Also too, exercises releases dopamine, so there's that reward there. But then there's also other external things that I created that I would look forward to once I had done it. Now, we can make it the other way as well. So for laws of behavior change, if you're trying to untangle an unhealthy habit, break an old habit, is to make it invisible, remove the cue, make it unattractive to minimize the craving, make it difficult. So increase the effort required in order to do the activity, and make it unsatisfying, remove the reward. Now this is definitely more challenging. So it's much easier to create a new habit or replace an old habit than it is to untangle the old one, but I'll give you an example here. So I'm sure lots of us would like to spend less time on screens. But let me tell you, when this phone is sitting right beside me, it's very visible, it's very attractive, it's very easy, and the reward is instantaneous because I'm getting that dopamine hit. So if I want to spend less time on my phone, one thing I'm going to do is actually make it invisible. So put it in another room, put it in a drawer, put it in the garage, lock it in the car, whatever you have to do for that amount of time, whatever the time is you've decided is appropriate, but make it invisible so that you're not tempted to just mindlessly grab it, okay? Making it unattractive, it's very difficult to make these devices unattractive. They're created to be attractive, but you can make it difficult. So maybe you make it invisible, maybe you make it more difficult by actually turning it off, okay? And then again, it's very difficult to make this device unsatisfying because it is innately built into the way that we use it and that dopamine that is triggered. So yeah, it's a challenge to create change this way. But one thing that might be a little bit easier is say you want to decrease your nighttime snacking. So again, make it invisible. Clean up the kitchen after supper, put everything away. And when you go to open the cupboards, if you don't have things in there that are going to be appealing to you, you minimize the craving. So making good choices around how you fill your fridge or what you put in your cupboards is going to make it easier, because it's going to be less attractive when you're tired at night and your body is naturally craving those sweet, salty, high-fat, sugary treats. And then again, it's very difficult to remove the reward, but the reward is built in here, because if you can successfully not do the snacking, then you feel like you've been successful, and that's the reward. All right, so thinking about how we can create a feeling of success. Success releases dopamine in the brain, which in and of itself is a powerful reward. And the way that we create habits is to generate positive emotions. So creating that sense of success will help to create change. Now, this is another excellent resource that I would definitely recommend if you want to learn more about this topic. But BJ Fogg works at Stanford, and he's done a ton of research around habits and behavior change. And his whole philosophy is around creating small, sustainable changes. So his recommendation is to start super small. So if it's something that's easy to do, it doesn't require high levels of motivation. So make it so easy that even when your motivation is low, you can still follow through without resistance and feel successful. So that's what I needed to do with my exercise habit. I needed to make it what for me felt like so small that I could be successful on a consistent basis. But he uses little examples like every time he goes to the bathroom at home, he does 2 push-ups. Or if you're out in a public washroom, you don't want to do push-ups, so you can do 2 squats. And he says sometimes he feels like doing more, and he does more. But it's not required. The requirement is to do 2. So after I've used the washroom, I do 2 push-ups. Or after I've used the washroom, I do 2 squats. And when you do that throughout the day, and sometimes you feel like doing more and you do more, great, then you will start to create a habit. He also talks about, things like if you want to create a habit of flossing your teeth, you start with a commitment to floss 1 tooth. And it sounds ridiculous, but it's so easy. And then you've done your 1 tooth and you feel successful. And then chances are you'll probably do 2 or 3, but maybe not. Doesn't matter, you've still been successful. And so just creating ways to feel successful and to be able to follow through so that you can follow through without resistance is really important. But determine your baseline and then just go for a 1% improvement from there. So both BJ Fogg and James Clear in his book Atomic Habits talk about the power of creating a 1% change. So improving by 1% isn't particularly notable. Sometimes it isn't even noticeable. But it can be far more meaningful, especially in the long run. And the difference a tiny improvement can make over time is astounding. So, some habit hacks. The first thing we want to do is make a plan and make a backup plan. So, when you have a plan, if your plan is to drink more water, it might be to start with the 1 to 2 cups every day. It might be seemingly small, but you're starting to create that new habit. So how are you going to do it? Where are you going to put the water? What are you going to put it in? What are the reminders going to be throughout the day? So I like my jar because I can see how much water I've had to drink. So my plan might be, okay, I'm going to drink 4 of these every day. I know how much is in here. I can see how much I've had to drink. Now, I have little backup plans so that if I get to lunchtime and I haven't had 2 of these, then that's my prompt. Okay, it's lunchtime. Before I have lunch, I'm going to finish my water. Okay? within reason. And then I have another prompt. So in the afternoon, I try to drink 2 of these. If I get to supper time and I haven't had it, then I finish my water before I have supper. So making a plan, making a backup plan, again, with exercise, this can be tricky. Or with screen time, it can be tricky, but this is especially important with kids or teens. So as our kids get older and they grow up, they want to, and they naturally desire to have more independence. And so when we're trying to create healthy change, not just for ourselves, but with them, it's really important to make a plan together and then to make a backup plan together. And I talked about swapping an old habit for a new one. So this is, most kids, for example, have a habit of having a snack after school. So if you're trying to create healthy habits around eating more fruits and vegetables, whatever it is that you're trying to incorporate more of, maybe it's more protein, maybe it's less sugar, then use that already well-established habit of an afternoon snack, but swap it for something healthier. Okay? Now, James Clear talks about this idea of habit stacking, where you attach a new habit to an existing one. So, again, when you have one habit established, you can use that habit to become the prompt for your next habit. So, if your habit is to start your day with coffee, then before you have your coffee, you have your 1 glass of water. And so you attach the water drinking habit to the already existing coffee habit. Maybe you want to stretch more after, add more stretching into your life. You recognize that, you're getting older, you're not as flexible, you're not as agile as you used to be. So at the end of your workout, start small. You're going to do 1 minute of stretching at the end of each workout. Maybe you want to read more. You recognize, I spend all this time on my screen and I need to just pick up a fiction book or a poetry book or something like that. And so for 5 minutes before you turn the light out at night, you start to have that habit and you attach it to your already bedtime routine. But you get to, again, start small, 5 minutes. Prioritize first things first. This is super important because of that idea of willpower and how we run out of it. And as we get more tired towards the end of the day, we are generally speaking less motivated. So doing those things that we want to create habits around. So if it's, let's say music practice, piano practice, or whatever instrument your child plays, and you want to start to create a habit. Again, make a plan with them, attach it to an existing habit, something that's already built into their routine. So maybe when they come home from school, the first thing they do is have a snack. The next thing they're going to do is their piano practice. And again, if this is a struggle to create this habit, start small so that they can be successful. So when my daughter started playing the piano, we wanted to create a habit. And it wasn't something that we wanted to be reminding her about every day. So if you don't want to remind your kids and they don't want to be nagged, then you have to create these habits and patterns. And remember, you want to create a system. And so when they have a system, a sequence of activities, then they're more likely to move through that system or that sequence without needing reminders and coaching and prompting for the long term. But then you also want to build in the reward. So they come home from school, they have a healthy snack, they need to do some music practice or whatever it is, and then I imagine that screen time is a huge reward. But using that as something that, yes, this is a treat, it's something that's fun, and it can be done after these other things have been done. And so by creating a sequence and trying to have a pattern of the order in which they do things can create a lot more ease. But they need to be involved in that plan making in order for it to be successful. And there needs to be that reward that everybody feels comfortable with. So finding creative ways for it to be rewarding is helpful too. All right, so let's get into this content. So I had a chance to listen to Danny Taylor's talk from January, and Danny's a good friend of mine, and we've often presented together at events or conferences. And I like presenting after him because he's already introduced this concept. I call it the 4 domains of health and wellness. He calls it the five areas of life, I think it is. And so recognizing that when we're talking about health and wellness and we're trying to create healthy habits, it's so much more than just our physical health. And so there's our physical health, there's our mental health, social emotional health, and spiritual health. And Danny talks about the environment as well, and the context in which everything happens. And I think that is just so important to keep in mind when we are creating habits. Habits are contagious, and mindset is contagious. And so who we are surrounded with and the way that people are behaving and thinking and the things that they're prioritizing it's going to influence us. And so recognizing that is important as well. And when we make changes in any one of these aspects of our life, it influences the others. So when we're feeling well physically, we have better mental energy. We have more ability to focus. We're more creative. And so our mental energy is a really good indicator of our physical health. When we feel better in our bodies, when we feel rested, we have more patience. Our relationships are influenced because we have the capacity to connect with people. We have more patience and energy to engage with people. And I love this reminder too about our spiritual health and well-being. So these are the things where we feel a sense of purpose, meaning, belonging, where we feel like there's something bigger than ourselves that is loving us, caring for us, looking out for us, and guiding us. And so although we're going to focus on the physical domain tonight, I just want to make sure that we keep in mind that that it's part of a bigger picture. It's like a table, and when everything is balanced, it's stable and strong. But when one of these areas is out of balance, it creates a lack of harmony, really, in our lives. All right, so if you'd like to grab a piece of paper, you're welcome to. Those of you here, you have a piece of paper. So this is a space for you to take some notes or just to reflect. But these are what I call the four pillars of physical health. And I like to use the word movement as opposed to exercise because it's so interesting. I had this today even I was seeing a patient in clinic, and when I ask people like, oh, so what do you do for exercise? If I use that word, some people are like, oh, I don't do anything. I don't exercise. But then it's like, oh, well, do you have any walking or built into your day? Oh yeah, like I'm a student at UBC, and that campus is huge. If you're taking full-time classes there, you're probably walking for an hour a day, right? Like it's just like movement that's built into your day. And you don't have a ton of time between classes, and you need to get here afterwards, so you're probably walking at a good pace. Or people take their dog out, or whatever it is, but just moving our bodies and recognizing that it doesn't have to be formal exercise in order for there to be benefits is really important. And so that's why I've called that pillar movement. And then stress management. People often sort of wonder, like, why stress management? Why is that a physical part of the physical health and not more mental? And it does absolutely impact our mental health, but it's also very connected to our physical health. So the stress response in the body is very physical, right? We can feel our heart rate go up. We start to sweat. We feel short of breath. We might even feel like chest tightness, we might get headaches. Like, it's a very physical response in the body. And movement is such a healthy way to manage stress. But if we over exercise, we can actually really create physical stress in our body. Nutrition, some of us eat when we're stressed. Some people don't eat when they're stressed. Sleep, I don't know if anybody else gets the 2 or 3 a.m. wake up and you can't get back to sleep even though you know you're tired, and you wake up and you kind of feel like your body is buzzing. Okay, this is stress. This is an overstimulated nervous system that's disrupting our sleep. And the frustrating part is that we really need that sleep in order to handle stress in healthy ways. And so these are all so interconnected. So again, when we look at these 4 pillars, just want you to take a minute. If you have the paper in front of you, you can circle it. If you're at home and you want to write it down, you can. But most of us tend to be naturally drawn to one of these. We experience a lot more ease. So maybe some of you are excellent sleepers. You really prioritize it. And you just are excited to go to bed at night, and maybe it's a little bit difficult to get up in the morning, or maybe you're just like, you wake up and you feel rested. Some people love to be active. They love to move their bodies, and so this is like easy for you to prioritize. Some people love to cook and eat well, and they love shared meals and the community that forms around that, or they really notice the difference. Their values are really around eating well and prioritizing that. So most of us have some natural inclination towards one of them where there's some ease, and we also usually have one area where there's some resistance, or we really have to, it requires more effort. And I think one of the most important things to remember when we're trying to create healthy change with our children and or in a family system is that people are going to have different areas of resistance, different areas of priority, or where they experience more ease or they're naturally drawn to. So let's talk about nutrition. When we're thinking about food, there's a few key kind of concepts that I like to just draw your attention to. And there might be something in here where you're like, oh, I've never heard of that before, I'm not familiar with that, or I hadn't thought about that before. And so I'm hoping that there's something in here that you can, at the end of the night, be like, oh yeah, that would be a really simple thing to start to implement with ease. So one of the things with food, and this is particularly challenging sometimes with kids, is something called protein pacing. And it's this idea that throughout the day you want to have like a steady intake of protein. So our breakfast cereals, toast, that kind of thing tends to be very high in carbohydrates. Maybe get some healthy fats in there, which is great, but lots of kids don't necessarily start the day with protein, and lots of adults don't either. But it really sets them up, and us, for success in terms of ability to focus and be engaged throughout the day. And part of that is because it helps to stabilize our blood sugar. And so trying to get some protein in and healthy fats in definitely in our 3 meals, and for kids if they're packing lunches and packing snacks, just to make sure that they have some options in there too. And some of you might have heard of this little, I don't know, I'll use the word acronym, it's not the right word, but trigger called 5210. And so the idea is that we aim for minimum of 5 different fruits and vegetables throughout the day. 2 is for the maximum recreational use or fun time of screen time. I think that's too much for most kids on a school day, but that's the sort of one of the guidelines. And then 1 hour, especially for kids, in terms of movement. And then 0, so 5210, so 5210, 0 being 0 sugary drinks. So When we're thinking about food and water, food and nutrition, really trying to minimize those sugary drinks it can be really helpful. Again, in terms of stabilizing blood sugar, but it really just is unnecessary, unhealthy calories for kids and for adults as well. So making sure that the sweet drinks, even juice, are a treat, and that we're trying to get 5 different fruits and veggies per day into our diet. And that part of the reason for that is because different fruits and vegetables just have different nutrients. And so it's kind of a simple way. Make sure you get 1 at your breakfast, 1 as your snack, 1 in your lunch, 1 in your after school snack, and 1 at dinner. And you've got 5 right there. Obviously you can do more, which is great, but it's just a simple way for kids, especially if they're packing their own lunches and their own snacks, or if they're part of that process, which I strongly encourage. It's a simple way to say, hey, do we have 5 different fruits and vegetables today? And then one of the things that I think is so important to keep in mind with food is the benefits of shared meals. And yes, I have a picture here. So this is myself and my daughter and another close friend on a backpacking trip. But I love this picture. I mean, yes, it's in the outdoors, but this is the power of shared meals. And there's so much connection and conversation that happen around the table, and it can be so quick. Sometimes we don't have a lot of time, but to sit down and eat together, we tend to eat better. We tend to eat more slowly. We eat more mindfully. It's an opportunity for us to connect and create a healthy relationship with food. And there is a really strong correlation, and I know most of you are parents, or all of you are parents to boys, but maybe some of you have girls too. And there's a direct correlation with the number of shared meals that happen and the incidence of depression, anxiety, and disordered eating among girls. I haven't seen the research to support that among boys, but I can only imagine that there's a correlation there. And so maybe, at this age and stage in life, with everybody has their different work schedules and their different activities, it can be really challenging to find time to create or to prioritize shared meals, but start with one meal, 1 dinner a week, or a Saturday morning breakfast or a Sunday morning breakfast. Even that is such a good habit. So if you did nothing else after tonight, if there was 1 more shared meal in your week, there's so many good things happening around that time. And just a reminder too that it's not about the food. It's about the connection and the relationship with food. And so, learning to eat mindfully, phones away during that time, and just to really connect. I mentioned water first. I won't spend much time talking about caffeine, but the recommendations really are to limit it ideally to 2 caffeinated drinks a day. And if you're noticing that your sleep is disrupted, to really pay attention to that, because it can be a contributing factor. It just increases the stress hormone in the body. As a cardiac nurse, alcohol is cardiotoxic. It's toxic to the heart muscle. And so there's some new guidelines actually that recommend a maximum of 2 drinks a week for men and women. And the research is showing that there's increased incidence of different types of cancers with alcohol consumption. But I think also too, just for our kids, thinking about the way that we talk about alcohol and the way that we talk about caffeine as well, because these are things that they're noticing and paying attention to and establishing their own relationship with as they get older, and making their own decisions around how they're going to consume or not consume these substances. All right, so with kids, make it obvious, make it easy, make a plan. Encourage their involvement, their input and participation. Offering water as a first drink. Sometimes when my daughter's sitting down doing her homework, I'll be like, hey, do you want some water? And she'll be like, no, I'm fine. And if I just put the water down in front of her, she will drink the whole thing. And so just making it accessible. Yes, as they get older, they're capable of making these decisions and packing their own lunches and making their snacks. but it doesn't always ensure that they make the healthiest choices. And so creating systems where we're supporting them and guiding them so that when they get to be older and they want to make these decisions or have the full autonomy to make these decisions for themselves, that they have the skills that they need to make them. All right, so movement. There's so many benefits to exercise. It is one of the most effective and underprescribed antidepressants and sleep aids. So again, if you're feeling like your mood is low, if you're struggling to sleep, then I would encourage you to look at ways that you can build movement into your day. It increases your energy level, it decreases your stress level, it has so many physical benefits in terms of strengthening your bones and building lean muscle, preventing cognitive decline, boosting your immunity, and it really is just so healthy, and it has that, as a result of exercise, dopamine is released. So there is that built-in reward, but we want to make it so that it's fun and enjoyable. For kids, it helps them develop gross motor skills, balance, coordination, and strength, helps them develop their intuition and learn to take healthy risks. And so this is last year at spring break. We tried something new. This is my family again, but we tried surfing for the first time. My daughter really wanted to try mountain biking. I was not interested in mountain biking. I'm a little bit injury averse. And so we found some family friends and they took her, and she had a fabulous day and so much fun. Finding things that just use your learning to, for kids to learn to use their bodies in different ways, I think is so important. And we want them to be active, but ultimately if it's not something that they enjoy, it's not something that's going to become a habit for them later in life. And so for those of you who have kids who are involved in competitive sport and they love team sports, great, it's kind of built in for them. But there are so many kids that don't. And so we want to just expose them to as many different things as we can until they find something that is fun and enjoyable for them. And it might not be team sports, it might not be something competitive. So finding ways for them to be active in ways that they enjoy is going to set them up to be active for life. And also too, finding ways for them to be active year round. So maybe, if you have the resources to try skiing or snowshoeing or snowboarding or whatever it is, but just outdoor activities in winter so that we can enjoy where we live and be active all year round. Or maybe in the winter you move more indoors and you play badminton or you try archery or whatever it is, but just being open to exploring with kids and using that time to build healthy connection with them. And that's what I love about these previous two pictures, is just the connection that was created and the memories that were made through trying something new. And I think this will be a tradition, even if it's just once a year, and it might be something that she decides to pursue later on in life, but exposing our kids to different ways of being active. So we do want them to be active, ideally for 60 minutes a day. Again, recognizing that a walk is activity, a bike ride is activity. Going and playing and swimming in the pool is an activity. Even if it's not kind of that formal exercise that we often think of. And we're so fortunate because our kids do have access to PE classes, so maybe it's built into their day in that way as well. But again, that's not every kid's favorite way of being active, and so really trying to be creative about finding things that they enjoy. And just a reminder for us as adults, there's a lot more benefit from frequency over like once a week. So for example, walking for 10 minutes a day, a brisk walk for 10 minutes a day is going to give you more benefit than a walk for 1 hour once a week. And the reason is because of all these physiological benefits, the mood benefits, the sleep benefits that come along with it. And so again, start small, make it something that's easy, sustainable, and enjoyable for you. It's really important. All right, sleep. So I think this is actually the most underrated one. I think sometimes we don't realize how tired we are. And my example of this would be that I actually used to think that I had a story that I was not a morning person. And it actually wasn't true at all. I just went to bed too late and I didn't get enough sleep. And so I was waking up in the morning feeling tired because I hadn't got enough sleep. So with having a child and wanting to start to exercise in the morning, I noticed that the key for me was actually to go to bed earlier. And so then when I was going to bed earlier, I was waking up feeling like, oh, okay, I'm rested, and I had the energy that I needed. So it wasn't that I wasn't a morning person. Now I love mornings. It was just simply that I wasn't getting enough sleep, and I didn't realize that. I don't think I realized how much sleep we need. So to summarize that, I think sleep is really the difference between surviving and thriving. So if we want to thrive and we want our kids to thrive, we really need to protect and prioritize their sleep. So this is the only time when recovery and regeneration happens in the body. The immune system recovers, our muscles regenerate, so this is especially important for kids who are really physically active. They probably need more sleep. It improves mood and supports emotional regulation, which helps them to have healthier relationships at school and deal with the stresses. It increases our level of patience, and one of the most important things that I think is often not understood by parents is that this is when memory consolidation happens. And again, it's the only time that it happens. So when we're sleeping, metabolic waste is cleared out from the brain. So all day our kids are working so hard that it creates metabolic waste. And when they sleep, or when we sleep as adults, this metabolic waste is removed from the brain, which enhances creativity and problem solving. But memory consolidation also happens during this time. So having kids staying up late studying for tests, it actually can be kind of a wash because they're staying up late to study, but they're actually not having that time to consolidate it in their memory overnight. And so we really need to find creative ways, make a plan with them to protect and prioritize sleep, because lack of sleep disrupts our hormones. And so if you are trying to change habits around unhealthy snacking at nighttime, for example, getting adequate sleep is really important. It disrupts the hormones that control our hunger levels. So for people who work shift work, and this is one of the things that was so challenging for me when I was working shift work as a nurse, is that when we're tired, it increases the hormone that tells us that we're hungry, and it suppresses the hormone that tells us that we're full. So at nighttime, when you're starting to feel hungry and you're craving sugar and high fat and salty foods, it's because your body is desiring, craving the energy in order to keep you going. But really, you're not actually hungry, you're tired. And so sometimes just having a bit of water and getting into bed, you'll notice like, oh, yeah, actually I wasn't hungry. I just was tired. So how much is enough? So for adults, we really need to be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And for kids, 9 to 12 hours of sleep. So that's kids ages like up to the age of 12. And for teens, 8 to 10. And it's challenging with teens because their body clock naturally shifts so that they are wanting to stay up later. And that, again, can be challenging as parents, but really encouraging them, if they are staying up later, to find ways to be up but be relaxing. So whether it's reading, whether it's listening to music, but being off screens so that when their body is tired and ready to sleep, they can get to sleep quickly. So reducing that stimulation. And this is really why we need a bedtime routine, is that it signals to the body. So I actually have a bedtime and I have a get ready for bedtime. And my get ready for bedtime is an hour before I'm going to go to bed. And it means that I'm off screens. It means that I'm like in my pajamas, teeth brushed, face washed, everything ready to go. And I can do other things. I often do my household chores so that I'm off screens at that time, maybe getting ready, packing lunches, whatever it is, but I'm already ready for bed. Because I found that, and this is the same with kids, that when I'm not ready for bed and it's time for me to go to bed, I really struggle to have that self-discipline and it's like willpower. It's like, I don't want to go wash my face. I don't want to brush my teeth, right? These things. And so we end up delaying or find ourselves scrolling on the phone or reading the news online or whatever it is. So that having that bedtime for ourselves and for our kids where it's off screens, and for my daughter, it's like you can read, you can practice piano, but the phone is outside your bedroom and it's charging at our agreed upon place. So keeping the phones out of the bedroom, being consistent, and then finding ways. Maybe for you it's to have a bath or a shower, reading, journaling, whatever it is that you like to do, but finding some ways just to signal to your body and for your kids to signal to their body that it's time to go to sleep. This is an excellent book and a great resource. It's called The Ripple Effect. And I like the way he has ordered these. So you'll notice that he starts with sleep better. So if you look at these 4 areas and you're not sure where to start, if you're waking up to an alarm every morning as opposed to waking up on your own, you know you're not getting enough sleep. It's the same for our kids. If we're having to wake them up for school every day, then they're not getting enough sleep. And so you might need to back up the bedtime. And on the weekends, if you can, let them sleep in. You can't catch up on your sleep, but you can at least get enough sleep on those days. And so when we sleep better, we eat better, we make better choices around our, because our body's not trying to get those calories to give us the energy that we need. When we eat better, we move better, and when we move better, we think better, we manage our emotions better, and we're just generally more productive. So, I told you it was going to be tight, Michelle. Okay, so stress management. I'm going to keep this short and sweet, but again, creating a morning routine where ideally we're not starting our day on our phones. As soon as we are on our phones and checking emails or reading the news or whatever it is, we activate that stress response in the brain. And so we just end up starting the day activated and stressed. But prioritizing play, rest, and connection, making time for hobbies. So hobbies are not competitive sports or piano practicing or any of those things where we are required to conform or perform. Hobbies are things that we do for fun, just purely for pleasure, purely for enjoyment. And spiritual practices can be so many things, but wherever it is that you feel that sense of sacred space, a connection to God or a higher power, those things that feel really grounding and leave you feeling calm and peaceful, I would identify those as spiritual practices. For me, it's being outside, it's being in nature, it's being by the water, it might be having a bath, something like that that's very calming and relaxing. And then scheduling downtime, so building those blocks of time where we just don't have stuff scheduled so that there's space for these things. So I love this picture. This is my daughter and a couple of her friends, but this is what play looks like when you're a teenager, right? Like it's like getting out and just, you see that kind of childlike playfulness that comes out when you get them into a different setting. Usually it requires getting out of the house and getting off screens, but just finding ways that are fun for them to either connect with you, connect with friends in fun, healthy, playful ways. This is a camping trip, but just those, again, scheduling downtime, those chunks of time. We're out of cell reception. It's not even an option here except to sit around the fire and chit-chat and roast marshmallows. Music can be really fun for kids, and I don't just mean playing music. So not all kids enjoy playing an instrument, but listening to music, dancing. For some kids, it's being creative, doing arts and crafts. My daughter loves to bake and to make things in the kitchen. But whatever it is that kids enjoy doing, just supporting those those things. All right, this is where we're going to end. So I'd encourage you to figure out the best place for you to start. What's the one, maybe two little habits that you think, if I could just create that habit, I know it would make a difference for me, or I know it would make a difference for my child or for our family, whether it's the way that you interact and communicate, whether it's something that's related to nutrition, movement, sleep, or stress management. But start small. Start so tiny that it's so easy that even when you don't feel motivated, you can be successful. It builds confidence and it generates momentum, and it does create that ripple effect into all aspects of our lives. And identify your supporters. And this is the beautiful thing about having a talk like this, where you are part of a community together. And I love doing this workshop as like in an interactive space with people, because you are a source of wisdom for each other. Maybe you're struggling with something or creating a new habit. Start just asking people, what are you doing? How are you creating this? How are you minimizing screen time? How are you getting your kids out and active, even though they don't like organized sports or whatever it is? But use each other as resources. Find out what's working for people and what might work for you. And there is incredible power in triads. And so having an accountability partner is good, but sometimes your accountability partner might be busy, or they're not available, or they've fallen off the wagon, whatever it is. But when you've got three, or you've got a couple of people who are supporting you, who are cheering you on, who are holding you accountable and encouraging you, it can be really helpful. And then just that reminder of just celebrating and feeling successful at something is a reward. So if it's something that you want to create, find a way that it's going to feel enjoyable, that it's going to evoke that positive emotion in you that will keep you going. And one of the questions that was submitted is brilliant, and it's how do we create or how do we sustain healthy habits and change? And I think this is really important to think about with kids and teens in particular, because as they grow and develop, what was rewarding to them in the past, or how they wanted to celebrate something in the past, may have changed and evolved. And that's why you need to have that conversation with them and make a plan and change the way that you celebrate. What is fun? What is rewarding? What is going to be inspiring? And it might be like, something at the end of the week when you've done it all 6 days, whether it's like, I don't know, packing their lunch dishes into the dishwasher or whatever. They've done that for all 5 days in a row, and then on the weekend you do something special. And so it doesn't have to be built into the activity itself necessarily, but if you're wondering why is this habit not sticking, or it used to work in the past, why is it not working now? Looking, is there a cue? Is there a trigger? Is it easy enough for them to do that they can do it, or we can do it even when we're not motivated? And then how can we celebrate and reinforce this pattern together? All right, so 8:04. We're running late. If you're still online, thanks for sticking with me. If you have any comments, feedbacks, or questions, if you're finding that you're really having challenges in any particular area, this is my contact info. You're welcome to contact me. I do one-on-one coaching, specifically around behavioral change and creating healthy habits sustainably. And so if that's something that's of interest to you, then you're welcome to contact me as well. But I hope there's something that has inspired you or prompted you to think of one or two small healthy changes that you can make for yourself, knowing that your kids are watching you. Your actions are more powerful than your words. And so even just being consistent and prioritizing your own health and well-being is such a gift to your children. And then looking for ways that you can do that together as a community and create sort of that ripple effect beyond, outside of yourself and into your community can be really powerful and rewarding too. So thank you for having me. Thank you for
so much,
sticking with
Alexia.
us.
If we can have a round of applause for those people who are here in the audience. So just a couple of takeaways that I took away. So I think creating a system to help us sustain and form the habits would be important. One thing definitely I'm going to aim to do is one shared meal at least a week, because it creates connection and forms relationship. Make it obvious, easy, and accessible. And sleep, we talked about that. That is super, super important, especially for kids and teenagers. And power of community as well. I think it's important that that's the reason why we have Parent Talks, is that so that we can be supported through people like Alexia and each other as well. And I will definitely revise my reward system with my kids to see what creates fun for them. So with that, I'd like to thank Theo so much for supporting us on the technical side of things. And the two boys that were here, thank you. And the parent volunteer. And with that, thank you so much. We will be sending the feedback survey as usual. And look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much.